Are you trying to lose weight but feel completely confused on how many calories you should be eating? Today I'm going to give you the real answer. The one that cuts through all the bull crap, all the myths, the clickbait, and the generic advice. You're going to learn how to calculate your ideal calorie range, avoid the mistakes that lead to stalled progress, and finally feel confident in your approach to nutrition. If you're tired of guessing and want to take back control, then this is the episode for you. And if you want to maintain a healthy relationship with overall eating and calories, this is a great episode for you. Welcome back to the Best You Podcast. This is a podcast that exists to help you improve all areas of your life, feel fulfilled, and positively impact those. All right, you guys, today I'm really excited to demystify the concept of calorie intake for fat loss. I want to make sure this is practical, actionable, and myth busting, because I think that a lot of people don't quite understand calories. I think that the word calories, I used to hate the word calories because I think there is such an unhealthy relationship that a lot of people have with the term calories, because I know that I used to always think that when I heard calories, that less calories was good, more calories was bad. But that's not the case. And that's probably what a lot of you guys are thinking. I feel like a lot of when we hear calories, it's triggering because we think we want to have less calories. No. Let me reshape your whole knowledge of calories. Let me reshape your whole mindset towards calories here today during today's episode, and really give you the idea of how much fuel you need to be having so that you can feel good, feel energetic, and look the way you want to look. And if you have the goal of weight loss, and if you have the goal of body fat loss, how you actually go about determining the number of calories that you should be eating so that you don't undereat and destroy your metabolism, and you don't overeat and not see any kind of progress. But before we dive into the specific talking points, I want to make sure that you know about the Build Your Intentional Life workshop that we're doing on Thursday, April 17th at 5 p.m. Central Time. I'm going to teach you guys how to learn how to live your best, most intentional life, because we're going to have a 1-hour free masterclass via Zoom. I'm going to be on there with you. And we're going to talk about the 6 different areas of life and how you can organize all the chaos that's going on in your life so that you can feel in control, because that's what we all want. We all want to make sure that we feel as in control as we want to make progress in all areas of our life. So sign up for that free workshop at nickcarrier.com/intentional. Again, nickcarrier.com/intentional. Okay, let's get into the talking points of today's episode on how many calories you should be eating in order to look good, feel good, and experience fat loss if that's your goal. So a few different pieces of context we need to dive into first is, what is a calorie deficit? What does that actually mean, and why is that essential for fat loss? So we look at both sides of the equation. Calories in, calories out. Calories in is simply the amount of calories that you eat on a daily basis. And let's back up again. When it comes to demystifying the topic of calories, calories is simply a unit of energy. Just think about it as that. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just simply a unit of energy. And so calories in is the amount of energy, if you will, that we're eating on a daily basis. And the way that we calculate that is by breaking it down into different macronutrients. The main macronutrients are going to be protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Protein and carbs, for every 1 gram of protein and carbs, it equals 4 calories. For fat, every 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories. So if I was to say eat a breakfast that contained 50 grams of carbohydrates, 30 grams of protein, and 20 grams of fat, let's break down how many calories that is. If there's 50 grams of carbs and 30 grams of protein, 50 plus 30 is 80. For protein and carbs, we already said that 1 gram is 4 calories. So 80 times 4 is 320 calories. So there's 320. I also said there's 20 grams of fat. 20 times 9 is 180. And then 180 plus the 320 is 500 calories. So if we're breaking down a meal and it's 50 grams of carbs, 30 grams of protein, 20 grams of fat, all that added up is 500 calories. So my breakfast, or whatever that meal is 500 calories. And then I would do the same thing for my lunch. I would do the same thing with my dinner. And I would sum that all up to get a total daily caloric intake. So that's how you calculate calories in. We're going to dive a little bit more into calories out specifics here in just a second, but then the calories outside of the equation is a little bit more nuanced. that is a number that's called total daily energy expenditure. And again, we're going to dive a little bit into that in just like 30 seconds to 60 seconds. But it's not all one size fits all for your caloric burn, because there are so many different factors that determine how many calories that you're burning. Your stress levels, your sleep, your hormones, your activity levels, how much you weigh, what your sex is, how old you are, your past nutritional intake, your food sensitivities, your blood work, your genetic testing. That's why it's not all one size fits all. So when somebody tells you that you should be eating a certain number of calories or macros because they're eating a certain number of calories and macros, like that's not what you should be basing it off of. You should be basing it off of the things that are personal to you. And so how do we figure out what our total daily energy expenditure is? Well, there's 4 basically components that sum together, that when added together, add up to your total daily energy expenditure, the total of calories that you burn on a daily basis. The first of which is called your basal metabolic rate, your BMR. That accounts for about 65% of the calories that you burn on a daily basis, and that's simply the number of calories that you're burning at rest. The second is your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That accounts for around 25% of the calories that you burn on a daily basis, and that is any activity that you're doing that is not planned exercise. So talking with my hands, moving around, walking to and from the grocery store, walking to and from the kitchen, things of that nature. Next is going to be your TEF, or your thermic effective food. This is the amount of calories that your body burns by breaking down the food that you consume. And that's going to account for around 10% of the number of calories that you burn on a daily basis. And then lastly is your EAT, your exercise activity thermogenesis. And that's your planned exercise activity that you might have on a day-to-day or weekly basis. And that's going to account for anywhere between 0 to 10% of your total daily caloric burn. Now, if you DM me on Instagram at carrier_bestu, if you DM me those 4 letters, TDEE, I will help you personally calculate how many calories you are personally burning on a daily basis based off of your body composition, your weight, your age, your sex, your activity levels, so that you know how many calories you should be intaking on a daily basis. So DM me TDEE and I'll help you do that. So let's back up. We talked about calories in. We take the number of grams of protein, carbs, and fats, multiply the number of calories, and do that for every meal. That gives you calories in. Then your total daily energy expenditure is your calories out. The contrast between those two numbers will determine whether you are going to be gaining weight, maintaining your weight, or losing weight. Now, if we have the goal of fat loss, which is what the title of the episode was, how many calories should you eat in order to lose weight, then the calories in need to be less than the calories out. Now the question would be, okay, how much? Anywhere between 300 to 600 calories less per day than the calories that you burn. So if you were to DM me TDEE, and I was to go into my personal calculator, that's very accurate, but it's still a projection, and I was to calculate how many calories that you are probably burning on a daily basis, and it says that you are going to burn 2,500 calories on a daily basis. If your goal is to lose body fat, I would have you eat probably around 2,100 calories on a daily basis. And the idea is that if you did that every single day for 7 days in a row, then because of 7 days of a 400 caloric deficit, leading to a total of a 2,800 calorie deficit, we should lose body fat. So the overall weekly caloric deficit is the most important thing in order to experience body fat loss. And so if you want to lose body fat, you want to make sure that you're consuming around 300 to 600 calories less on average per day over the course of a week. And then obviously you want to repeat that week after week after week, because consistency is the most important thing. Now, one caveat that I want to add to this is a very common mistake from people who have done yo-yo diets, have been doing yo-yo dieting, meaning they go into a diet and then out of a diet, into a diet, out of a diet, or just have done a lot of dieting in the past, is they have consistently consumed very few amounts of calories. And when you consume very few amounts of calories, then your body's metabolism will slow down. Because quick little science, quick little education here is that our body doesn't want to be in a caloric deficit. Because think about it this way. if you burn 2,500 calories per day, your body knows that it's going to burn 2,500 calories. If you're only feeding it 2,000 calories, your body is like, whoa, I'm not getting as much energy as I need per day. And it can withstand that for a little bit. But over time, over the course of several weeks, several months, if you're consistently burning 2,500 and only eating 2,000, your body's like, we can't do this anymore. And it will slow its metabolism down to the point where you're not burning 2,500 anymore. It will go down to where you're burning 2,000 calories per day. It will slow itself down. And so what happens oftentimes when people are chronic dieters is they're consistently eating so few calories to where it's slowing down their metabolism to where they aren't burning very many calories. And when you're not burning very many calories, and then you all of a sudden have some bad weeks, bad months, bad years of eating, body weight goes up. And so if you're somebody who is already eating too few of calories, the last thing that you would want to do is get into a further caloric deficit. And so that is the caveat. If you are somebody who knows you're under eating or have been dieting for a long period of time, trying to cut calories by another 300 or 600 is probably not the best way to go about this. That would be a completely separate coaching conversation that we could have. Now, to give you guys some like real life examples of calorie intake ranges, I'm going to give you 4 different example people, 2 females, 2 males, 2 of which might be considered a little bit overweight, 2 of which are going to be considered fit. So let's start with the females, and let's start with the female who is 150 pounds, 50 years old, 30% body fat, and moderately active. This is a very regular example that I would have. I have plenty of clients who are going to be around this. 150 pounds, 30% body fat, 50 years old, moderately active. That's pretty regular. That's not really overweight per se. That's pretty average. Putting that through their TDEE calculator, that person is projected to burn about 2,100 calories per day. And so if they had the goal of losing body fat, they would want to consume about, let's say, 1,700 calories per day. When I'm giving the caloric intake for weight loss in these few examples, I'm going to give a 400 calorie deficit. So I said 300 to 600 might be the range, so I'm going to land in the middle at 400. So that person would consume about 1,700 calories. Now, another female who is younger but weighs more, 30 years old, 165 pounds, they're 21% body fat, and they're very active. This is somebody who is pretty athletic build. They would burn 2,600 calories on a daily basis. And so if their goal was to lose weight, they would want to consume about 2,200 calories. And to bring that into context in comparison to the one who is 50 years old and has a little bit more body fat on them, percentage-wise, but it weighs less, like that, the younger, more fit, more toned individual should be consuming about 500 more calories per day. That's almost an extra meal per day compared to the other person. And so that's why it is not a one size fits all when it comes to a caloric intake recommendation. It is very much, you need to know male, female, you need to know body weight, you need to know body composition, you need to know age, you need to know activity levels. All that stuff is super important when it comes to customizing your caloric intake for you. So those were a couple of female examples. Now a couple of male examples. The first one is going to be, again, a very typical male that I might coach. 210 pounds, 25% body fat, 40 years old. So I should probably start with age. Male, 40 years old. They're 210 pounds. They're 25% body fat, and they're moderately active. Again, this is somebody who is probably 40 years old. They have a little bit of a history with exercise and fitness, but they maybe are starting to feel like they have a little bit of a beer belly and their clothes don't fit as tight. That's that person. Their projected total daily energy expenditure, their total daily caloric burn is going to be around 3,000 calories per day. So if they wanted to lose weight, they might need to intake around 2,600 calories per day. Now, in contrast, somebody who is younger, much smaller, and much more toned, let's take a 30-year-old male who's 165 pounds, 8% body fat, and very active, they would consume the same exact amount of calories. So even though they weigh 45 pounds less, but because they're younger, probably have more muscle and are more active, they would consume the same number of calories compared to that older person who is a little heavier. Consume 3,000 calories. If their goal was to lose weight, they would want to consume about 2,600 calories. Now, to give you guys some practical tips on adjusting calories over time as your body adapts, to start off, I would say if your goal is to lose body fat and your metabolism isn't too slow, then you want to start with the caloric deficit, like I said, of 300 to 600. The idea is that you want to start in the smallest caloric deficit possible that yields results, that provides you with results. Because if you're getting results in a small caloric deficit, that leaves you more room to continue to push calories down a little bit, little by little over time, as your metabolism slows down, as your metabolism kind of resets to the lower number of calories. Because if you do too dramatic of a caloric deficit too quickly, you might lose more weight in the short term. However, more of that weight is going to be coming from muscle mass, and you're going to slow down your metabolism much more quickly. So you would much rather do the smallest caloric deficit possible, and then once you've slowed your metabolism down to the point where you don't want to cut calories anymore, you would do something that's called a reverse diet. And again, that would be a whole separate conversation that we would have as a coach and client relationship. The other tip that I would have with regards to calories and macros in particular is that as you age, you would want to consume more protein as you get older because of something that's called anabolic resistance. And I'm not going to dive into that. It's a conversation for another podcast episode, but anabolic resistance is essentially like as you get older, your muscles are less likely to undergo what's called muscle protein synthesis with the same grams of protein as you would when you were younger. And so you need more protein to get the same sort of response out of your body. I would really just encourage you to finish off this episode. I would encourage you to really think about sustainability when it comes to fat loss. It is not something that you want to try to fix quickly, because if you try to fix quickly, one, that leads to the wrong mindset. Two, that leads to actually destroying your metabolism. And three, that leads to long-term yo-yo dieting, long-term cycling in and out of the body weight that you want to have and in and out of the body composition that you want to have. So before I wrap things up, I want to encourage you to sign up for the Build Your Intentional Life workshop that we're doing Thursday, April 17th at 5 p.m. Central Time. You can go to nickcarrier.com/intentional. We're going to be trying to organize the chaos of your life because you're trying to manage your health, your career, your family, your spouse, your finances, your spiritual life. You're trying to do all these things and it's like so overwhelming. And you're like, I feel so overwhelmed and out of control. It's like, let's organize it. nickcarrier.com/intentional. And we're going to organize the chaos of your life on Thursday, April 17th on a free 1-hour masterclass on Zoom. So to wrap things up, knowing your ideal calorie range is a total game changer. Calories are not good. Calories are not bad. Calories are simply a unit of energy. And when you understand them better, they don't hold this power over you. You have the knowledge to understand how many calories is appropriate for you, given your sex, your age, your weight, your body composition, your activity levels, and your goals. All of that stuff is so important. So how do you actually calculate your calories for fat loss? Number one, you DM me on Instagram at carrier_bestyou. You DM me the 4 letters TDEE, and I'll help you calculate how many calories you're burning on a daily basis. Or you can just go online and find a free calculator. But if you want me to coach you, I got you. So figure out your calorie burn. Then you subtract 300 to 600 from that number, and you consume that many number of calories each day for the next 7 days. And then you do that over the course of at least the next 6 weeks. And if you do that, fat loss will be made possible. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned a little bit something about calories, and I hope the word calories holds less of a grip on you, and it's less triggering, It's less scary. And I hope you feel empowered by today's episode. Remember, join the workshop by going to nickcarrier.com/intentional. Share this episode with a friend or family member if you would like to, if they're on a fat loss journey themselves. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button down below. I hope today's episode helps you get closer to the healthiest version of yourself. And ultimately, I just really hope this episode helps you get closer and closer to your best you.